Okay, let's jump in. So a few housekeeping. If this is your first Kuali Days presentation, this will be appreciated for you. And if not, then thanks for joining us for the total of this week so far. As a reminder, all attendees will be on mute throughout today's presentation. If you have any questions, go ahead and click on that Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window, and we will jump on those questions likely throughout today's presentation. This presentation is going to be a TED Talk style. So each of our panelists are going to be sharing their story in about 10 minutes or so. So as they're sharing, think of some questions, and there will be time at each panelist, after each panelist's presentation to do a little Q&A. As a reminder, we are recording these sessions, and we will be sharing these likely next week following Kuali Days, both through the Socio app as slides, as well as the recording of the actual session. And with that in mind, I'm Katie. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for the Kuali Build team. Excited to be with you all today, and we'll let the panelists give a full introduction of themselves at their presentation time. But we are joined by the CIO of the University of Hawaii, Garrett, Janet, who specializes in ITS migration and scheduling with the University of Michigan, and Brian, who's the Executive Director of Enterprise Architecture and Infrastructure at UC San Diego. And with that in mind, because our panelists are sharing quite a few slides, I'm actually going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to kick it over to Janet, who will kick off the sharing part of our first TED Talk presentation.
There we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Janet Przybylski, as Katie said. I am the Migrations and Scheduling Manager with the University of Michigan. Today, I would like to talk to you about how the university and share with you us implementing Kuali Build twice. So just a little bit of background. The University of Michigan has 3 campuses, Ann Arbor, Dearborn, and Flint. The Ann Arbor campus is where I'm located, our main campus. We have 19 schools and colleges. We have over 275 degree programs, and we have multiple annexes across the US and the world. So we are supporting our colleagues everywhere. The university started looking at Kuali Build in 2018, and we actually were asked to deploy it to campus in January of 2020. And that was my job. So I began with putting together an implementation plan. Our first step was to do a proof of concept. So we took several forms that were already in existence, PDFs, paper forms, online, Excel spreadsheets. From ITS, we had a PDF. From HR, a remote work form. From my team, Migrations and Scheduling team, MST, we had several forms, a preferred maintenance plan form and a vacation form. So we converted those into Build apps. Central Campus Finance, our partner there, we took their tuition projections process, which was all on Google spreadsheets, and we actually built into an app for them. Tom Ammerman, who was the original process owner of Build, and he retired in October, was a extreme fan of rapid application development, RAD tools, and he used Kuali Build to do RAD for the university, and our developers are still doing that now. So once step 1 was done, and it was a success, we started what we call our ITS new service launch process. This launch process has a lot of information that we need to gather, a lot of testing, a lot of assessments that we need to do prior to actually making our service live. So first off, we have to get formal leadership approvals, and that's not just in ITS, that's across campus and with our campus partners. We then need to secure the funding for Kuali, and we have to put together a 3-year budget and a 3-year financial plan. Next is actually communicating it to our service governance and our service owners. We let them know what Kuali Build does. We give the presentation as far as the benefits of it, who our customers will be, what we expect the growth to be like, the whole projection of everything. Then we start with all of our assessments and our testing. We do digital accessibility with our digital UX team, making sure that it is accessible for everybody. We do a security assessment test with our IIA team. We go ahead and do a resource assessment, and not just in ITS. We go out to our campus partners and say, will this increase your workload? Will it decrease your workload? Will Kuali Build be able to add resources, or will it take away resources? So we need to do a whole resource assessment on that. Then we present it to our technical review board. This is more for reviewing the architecture of Kuali, how it fits in with our infrastructure. Is there any changes that we need to do? That kind of thing. So we work with them a lot. The next big part is the actual service, making sure our service is supported, working with our service desk, our help desk, getting first level support in there, putting knowledge documents into our ticketing system. Then we have our second and third level support, knowledge and transfer and training. And this is very important because this is my team and they're very important, but we have to go out and work with the customers and actually train them on build. So we need to know a lot about what's going on and understand actual build, the whole Kuali build process. Then we put in a communication plan, and our communication plan isn't just an email to ITS. We look at putting it out on a lot of different media, making our customers aware that there's a new service that's available to them, giving them a better explanation. So we work with our communications teams to make sure that we do this right. And the final thing is putting together an implementation timeline and a plan. We didn't want to do a big bang. We wanted to do it methodically. We wanted to do it so that we could actually do a lot of interaction with each of our customers so that they could have a very good experience going into Kuali Build. So once step 2 was done, we started step 3, which was actually scheduling and starting the rollout in the end of March of 2020. We had 2 units, School of Dentistry and the Shared Service Center, that were already on board. We had already done training. They just needed a little bit of help to get some of their forms started and working in Kuali Build. So we were really excited that they were going to be our first 2 actual customers outside of our finance partner. Then we also had set up that we would be meeting with our unit ITS representatives to do a presentation and a demonstration. This is about 30 ITS partners in each of the units, colleges and around campus. So we could present it to them and get them started in Kuali if any of them were interested in moving their paper forms over to Build. We also had set up in April going out to the unit reps for human resources, student, and finance. So we were prepared. Our plan was ready. And I actually took a vacation starting March 10th. When I came back, it was closed. There was nothing happening. I didn't even come back to the office when I got through with my vacation. We were given direction to actually all new projects that were in flight to put them on hold. We then looked at everything and we were being fiscally responsible, saying, do we actually do this or do we just maintain what we have? With Kuali Build, we decided that we would maintain what we have and not go forward with the actual implementation of campus rollout. But as COVID started going through, we found a need to actually have a case management process put in place. Kuali Build fit that need. Jennifer King one of my team members spent 3 weeks putting together the most awesome case management tool in Build. It included tracing, it included mandatory testing, it included compliance, follow-up. It was just unbelievable. And she was getting these requirements from email, from Google Forms that were all over campus, from people just emailing her or calling her and saying, we need this information in our Build app. So we put this together. It was actually doing great work. And then COVID got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we were finding that we couldn't actually contain all of the information that we needed to track within there. mandatory testing was huge. What would happen when a student tested positive? All of a sudden, we had to move that student from where they were at right then and put them into an isolated, safe area. So that required housing, that required facilities, it required our transportation group, it required, you know, a lot of other people that we needed to actually keep in touch with. And Kuali was getting to be not the tool that we needed. It was not as robust as we needed. So we took everything from Kuali and actually ported it over to Salesforce, where they were then able to expand it and also integrate with the state of Michigan Health Department, with Washtenaw County Health Department, with all of the other hospitals in the area. And actually, the Response to Blue app that you see right there on the screen is part of it. This is our daily tracking screening checklist. And this is part of it. This information gets put into and is part of the actual case management for our COVID and for the pandemic. So Kuali Build was the foundation for what we're currently using in our Salesforce area right now. It was what started, it was built the requirements from there, but it just grew and we were very proud of it. So a year has passed. Some of us have gotten our vaccines. Our campus is opening up more and we're thinking about revisiting our step 3 again. We're going to look at rollout again. We need to, in order to do this, we need to refresh our service launch process, not start it over, just refresh it. We need to look at our knowledge. We need to look at our support base. We need to make sure that everybody is more up to date. We're also looking at not doing a whole unit representative release. We're looking at doing what I'm calling Kuali Build on request. We're going out to the units that have already asked to use Build, School of Dentistry, the shared service centers, plus a couple of others that have contacted us over the year. And we will go out to them and help them build their apps and get them up to speed on it. We're also going to be needing to take a look at our current apps and updating them. Over the year, Kuali has just done unbelievable with adding new features and new functionality into Build. So we need to look at our current apps and actually see how we can actually make those better. And then we need to get ready for campus. We need to look at our presentation and our demonstration that we had set up back in last year and look at actually getting it so that it will work how we're doing right now remotely, and hopefully get that taken care of very soon so that we can do remote knowledge transfer and we can do remote demonstrations and we can help our campus partners with that. So that's where we are at the university with how we're going to be implementing Kuali Build again. So thank you. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Janet, for walking through that. And while we are waiting for a few questions, one question I have for you is, I know in your experience and really what your role is specializes in, you walked through it a little bit here already, is you roll out a lot of campus-wide implementations of different systems. Is there a recommendation you have if a university was going about something like rolling out Kuali Build across their campus, the approach they should take to supporting that implementation campus-wide?
So I've done several rollouts on our campus. We've had what I call big bang, where it just starts that day and it is live across campus. And then we've also done the phased approach where you did groups of people along the way, and both of them work. It just depends on what your services that you are actually implementing. My key is that I have a great support team. I have a great team that I can rely on, and our communications team, our customer service reps that work with as liaison between our units and ITS are fantastic. So I actually rely on them a lot in order to be able to organize it and make sure that it gets done the way that we were expecting it. Having everything prepared up front, that's why that whole process before just makes it so much easier. When you're rolling out and you don't have a prep plan of any kind, it just makes it too hard for other campus partners to do and help. So I like having the plan up front and done. So I hope that answers that question.
It does. No, thank you. Thank you for walking through that.
Mhm.
And due to time, feel free if you have a question for Janet, think of it, go ahead and add it to our Q&A box. And Janet, if you want to stop sharing.
Great.
And Brian, I think you're up next if you want to take control.
All right, so my name is Brian DeMel. I am the executive director for our enterprise architecture group and the infrastructure for the campus at San Diego. The infrastructure includes all of our network and voice services, as well as compute storage and data and integration platforms there. I've done other stuff there, but that's my current scope. So I'm just gonna walk through a little story. So once upon a time, there was this organization that needed to make a significant shift in their enterprise systems, which they kind of look like this. Anyway, in 2017, enter this ESR program that was developed on the campus. So ESR stands for Enterprise System Renewal, and it was defined as a multi-year complete overhaul of our existing legacy platforms. With that program, it was a cloud-first strategy, was inclusive of our finance, student, HCM, research administration, document and records management, facilities information, as well as a new data and integration platform, a data warehousing platform, and a typical of other, and a bunch of others that were there. So as is typical in sort of a higher ed landscape, we still had a very distributed organization, even though we were doing lots of centralization over the past, 5 years. So a couple of the outcomes for the ESR program were, of course, to replace these legacy systems with a more modern architecture, as well as to try to disincentivize local application development. Because I'm sure many of you know from being in higher ed for any length of time, a lot of the distributed development, there are duplication, triplication, quadruplication of essentially the same types of processes that are going on throughout the organization. So this was one of the outcomes, or a couple of the outcomes, definitely not all of them here. So enter Kuali Build. So we were in this process, we were trying to identify a component to disincentivize this distributed development, which was the need for what we were at that point calling a universal workflow tool that would provide a kind of low code, no code platform to allow the entire organization to move away from this lightweight application development and to be able to have the ability to share these applications with other groups across the organization. So we were already deploying Kuali Research, and we were looking into and have since deployed Kuali COI and IRB. So at that point, we engaged in the design partnership with Kuali for the Build platform, and we brought in Kuali Build probably in the 2018, 2019 timeframe. And it was at that point, just myself with my enterprise architecture hat on and one of my other enterprise architects that were on point because we had a ton of other activities going on with the ESR program. We had a finance deployment that was underway, payroll replacement, and a few others. So if you fast forward to, or like from now back up to January of last year, 2020, we were kind of, trying some stuff out. We had a couple in development and testing. We didn't have any deployed. We didn't really have a dedicated service owner at that point in time. And so in March of 2020, which all of us will remember for quite a long time, and specifically March 9th through 12th, we had a group from Kuali visited San Diego, and we did a 4-day workshop, included about 20-ish staff from the UC San Diego location. At that point, we kind of started prototyping a couple of applications that were being worked on, and they helped us kind of go through this. So then And then this happened, right? And we were all kicked out and exiled to our homes. However, we took the opportunity in that point in time, because of what was going on with COVID, the need arose to start automating some of these spreadsheet-based processes and some that were kind of loosely distributed across our organization. And so the first application in May that we actually ended up deploying last year was a return to on-site research application within Build. And this one, the way we did this, so one of my colleagues that operates on the research administration side came to us and asked, said that they had a need for this. We took about an hour and a half worth of time to train him on the Kuali Build application. He had a prototype done by the next day. Within about 3 days, we actually deployed this and started using it. And there were some subsequent tweaks and adjustments to the application. But within 30 days or so, there were over 2,000 submissions in this specific application that we deployed on Build. I'm having trouble with this. In July of last year was our heavy lift for our ESR program. And so we deployed both a system-wide payroll application for the UC, as well as we went up on Oracle Cloud Finance in June and July of last year, respectively. With that came an entirely newly architected, which I mentioned earlier, integration platform. So everybody was quite busy with a lot of other things, and we hadn't returned back to what we were trying to do with Kuali Build. But by September, as we started to get some increased demand for some additional applications, some on the security side to do security certification for labs, some lightweight ones for some administrative uses within some of the departments around campus. We were able to assign a dedicated service owner to focus on this, because it was still just myself and one of my enterprise architects that were trying to manage the build application and manage the deployment, which wasn't really a deployment, it was much more of an incubation period with that. So we assigned an individual that was in what was part of our Lean Six Sigma program and had been for quite a few years. And he's either a Lean Six Sigma green or black belt. Oh, he just told me he's a black belt. His name's Sean Monroe. He's actually, I think, an attendee on this thing. Anyway, he's now our dedicated service owner and has been instrumental and kind of the catalyst that we needed to be able to sort of stand up Build as a service offering. So since we've put Sean in place, we've added at least 11 or 12 new applications, about 10 additional integrations with other things. As of today, there's about 50 total applications, as you can see on the slides. They're not all deployed. Like I said, around 12-ish are deployed. Quite a few thousand documents submitted. And Sean has been developing a formal onboarding process onto the Build platform and trying to establish a community of practice for this. So here are just some examples of some of the applications that are deployed. Ours are return to on-site work. This We're Better Together is a staff appreciation submission application. We've got some telecommuting and work agreements in here. Security stuff, student petition to change grades. The campus opted to allow students to go to a pass no pass for the fall quarter. Some other things in here, I won't just go through each one. Anyway, and also the most important one is Sean built a Kuali Build application to allow our distributed and other IT and non-IT folks to submit a new application request within Build. And so that's kind of where we're at now. And I know with Sean at the helm, we will be increasing the utilization of Build over the next period. And thank you. Take a question or pass it on.
Thank you, Brian, for walking through that. One question I have for you is, what is the biggest impact Build has made on your institution? If you had to just choose one.
Well, I think the biggest one, especially last spring after we were all, moved off campus because of COVID, the return to research app, there was a huge demand from our researchers to get back into their labs. And with all the restrictions and the protocols necessary for us to be able to deploy that app within, it was within days of us getting the green light to be able to do this, that we were able to deploy the app, get it out, get the researchers and their staff to start submitting them, and get a large number of research staff back on campus very quickly. We do about $1.5 billion in research every year. And so that was a huge negative impact for those groups not to be able to be in their labs doing the work they needed to do.
I earlier this week, Sean had walked through that when we did the panel with Davidson on COVID, and that how quickly you were able to get back to campus. It was really impressive. We have another question from Zachary, which is there a middleware solution being used at UC San Diego with Build, and if so, which one?
So our middleware package, which is this new integration system that we have put together for this ESR program, this broader ESR program. So a component of that's being used. So we have an API manager that is leveraged there that is serving up data for Build from a few different other data sources, including our new facilities information system. So a couple of the apps can actually pull authoritative source location data for the campus. And we also have been able to integrate that with a roles-based system that we have on campus to do some like approval authorizations with that. And we have plans to start using this integration platform even more fully with Kuali Build. So it is actually a wide range of capabilities. It's a combination of Apache Kafka and Apache NiFi for data streaming. We've got some managed file transfer and other capabilities on there, but the core of it is this Kafka NiFi platform to do real-time data movement. And so we're doing that on a number of fronts. We're doing that with, and this is not related to Build, but we're doing that with Canvas, and we're doing it with a couple other systems in terms of doing event-based messaging into our data warehousing. But we're planning on doing some certain similar things with Build and utilization of that platform.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. It's really interesting. At this point, for time's sake, Garrett, if you want to start sharing and kick off on your presentation, and then we'll take some questions at the end.
Sure. Greetings, everybody. Good morning for those on the West Coast, and good afternoon for those on the East Coast and in the middle. My name is Garrett Yoshimi. I'm Vice President for IT and CIO for the University of Hawaii system. We're Hawaii's system of public education, 10 campuses statewide, an R1, a couple of baccalaureates, and 7 community colleges. Roughly, give or take, 10,000 employees, 45, 50,000 student headcount. So we're kind of in the middle from a size standpoint. We're big in some cases, we're not big in others, but we have some interesting challenges with institutions spread across the islands of Hawaii. A lot of fun sometimes, and again, a lot of challenges from time to time, in particular with the pandemic. One of the interesting things that I'll point out as before I drop into the presentation material, we are what I would say is a fairly distributed IT organization. So my central organization, which is central IT for the system, represents about 40% of the headcount of IT specialists throughout the University of Hawaii system. The other 60% are located in individual campuses, in pockets, in small and large schools and colleges, some departments. So the rough head count, we have basically 200, 240 and change IT specialists that are not part of central IT. So it makes for an interesting landscape. So I did want to, as you can see from my slide, I did want to put my entry in for the longest title in any presentation possible. So I tried to make it as, if you actually read through it, it makes sense, especially for those in IT and for those not in IT. It totally makes sense from the standpoint of having to deal with the central IT folks. Put the negative cloud above everybody, the central IT folks getting in the way, not doing their thing, and really the trying to look at how we solve that problem on a going forward basis. So our let me describe central IT starting this way. So we do all of the enterprise systems. So basically anything that touches any and all of our students, faculty, and staff and researchers across the system are the systems and infrastructure that my organization supports. So all of the kind of classic finance, HR, LMS, student system, we happen to be, we're not a full suite school, so we're a banner SIS and financial aid. We're a PeopleSoft HR, we're a Kuali Finance, we are a Sakai LMS, and on and on and on. You kind of get the idea. And again, this is the stuff that falls into central IT from the standpoint of responsibilities. And then there's all the other stuff. So the little, I don't know if this comes in really well on the slide, but little twinkly star thingies that are around the core functions are really the things that from time to time, all of us have seen a lot of these small, independent, standalone systems come up and create presence. In addition to, and I love Brian's comments about the duplicate, triplicate, quadruplicate, whatever, pick a number, shadow systems that exist. There are also a lot of these individual and, well, let's start as individual standalone systems, but that typically morph over time. And depending on your age, or I should say, depending on your vintage, you will recognize some of these as the solutions that folks outside of central IT, and not just IT specialists, but also business people, folks that found things easy to use, from the early days of Macintosh, the HyperCard thing, in addition to our classic Microsoft Access solution. There's a bunch of other of these solutions that have grown and then come up over time. You show up at Amazon, you put down your credit card, you pay $19, $29, $99, and you get a system that you can use to build your standalone application. And what that's done for us is it turns those little twinkly stars into these little flames that happen all over the place. And as my friends in areas like Southern California know, those flames quickly turn into things like this. The success of the individual and standalone applications, somebody else sees it, I want to use that too. Can I use it? Sure, just copy it and go ahead and use it. And then can I use it too? Well, the 5 other financial analysts in this one department are using it, so why don't you spread it across different campuses or across parts of our system? And all of a sudden, we start to have these flames kind of lapping at our feet. And remember, through all of this, we still have to keep the enterprise systems running. We have to keep the enterprise architecture running. We have to make sure that stuff continues to run from a central point of view. So over time, we tended to try and simply stomp out the flames, try to create either supplemental applications or replacement applications to kind of take care of them on either a 1-by-1 or a quadrant-by-quadrant basis, to take the things that have developed into broad use and broad application across different parts of our system and try to bring them into enterprise services. And as you can imagine, it's not easy. A lot of the tools and the method of us creating applications over time are they're very rigorous. They allow us to create high performing applications, but they also take a bit of time and resources to put things together. So we continually still need a way to figure out how to address the ring of fire, so to speak, that continuously puts pressure on central IT organizations. And this is common. This is what everybody faces, but that continually pushes pressure on the central IT organization to be able to respond to this in a reasonable manner. Our solution, and you know, one of the things that's really interesting is we've historically wanted to create kind of order and rigor as we go through our processes. We do have to recognize, though, that the ability to create applications without having teams of developers and business analysts rally for each of these to create these applications together, the need to have these tools available for us are really kind of the one of the things that we've been looking for over time, that can help us bring some order to the chaos that's frankly created by some of the what I'll call the retail tools that are present. They're still there. There's still a lot of them. A lot of them come to market. A lot of new ones are introduced every single year, and you'll see them in the airline magazines for those of us that actually get back into planes at some point in time. But you see them in the airline magazines, TV ads, in the Amazon ad, the Best Buy ad. A lot of this stuff will show up continually. And what we have been looking for, what we were looking for that Build solves for us, is something that really provides that functionality, provides the ability to support and build applications, but that also allows us to connect to our enterprise infrastructure so that these are not one-offs. These are not little clusters that grow up and get established by themselves. And oh, by the way, when that graduate student that wrote the Access application for you graduates and you don't have any way to support that application anymore, it would really be nice if there was some common development tool that underlied all of this stuff and that set on top of our enterprise or enterprise class infrastructure, such that we could provide some reasonable either turnover support or a way to bring consistency across these applications that are being developed. So the stuff that's on the screen right now is just some of the really strong selling points. And this will actually help to address, I think Liz Christensen dropped a Q&A thing in a little earlier, address some of the things that we thought were really critical items that Build does for us and that can do for us, that are important in the reasons why we adopted Build as, you know, and it's one of the elements in our toolkit. It's not just the only one, but it's one of the important ones because of the ability to attach to our enterprise infrastructure, to tie to our enterprise ID management system, provides a consistent UI and UX, not only for folks that are using it, but also for our developers as well. And that in fact continues to evolve over time to include a lot of really cool stuff that we think is important in this space in order not to just satisfy that individual, I want to automate this one PDF form or this one paper form, and run it through the approval of a couple of different people along the way. But I want to be able to make it consistent so that we can support this over a long period of time. Let me, and I know I want to leave some time for questions at the end. So let me talk a little bit about how we deployed this. And it's not nearly as rigorous as my two friends on the panel this morning. We took a very, and you might almost call it chaotic, but we took a very interesting approach to deploy Build. We basically demonstrated it for a bunch of folks. We deployed some applications for free because we took them and we just did them, put them out the door. And then we let those seeds go ahead and grow over time. And the interesting thing for us, you see the background on this particular slide. This is actually a screenshot off of our Build portal. This is actually a little bit dated. I checked quickly this morning. We're up around 200 apps on our system-wide basis right now. So it is growing. It's growing substantially. And as I was talking with Katie before the session, we actually have a different problem now. We now have a roaring wave of demand for folks that want to do this, not just as app developers, but also as people that want to get their workflows implemented, in no small part to what COVID has done to us. We've got to take the paper out of the flow. We've got to be able to do workflows that people can do approvals on wherever they happen to be, wherever they happen to be working from at that particular point in time. And this really gives us a way to kind of jump over those hurdles and get to a point that we can really use this across the enterprise. So I'm going to stop there. And I had to throw in a couple of beaches along the way just because it's what we do. But I'm going to stop there and maybe drop back to Katie.
Thanks, Garrett, for walking through that. I will thank you for calling out Liz's question earlier. One of the things that I would love to know from Brian and you, Garrett, is you have seen Build. You're part of our design panel, so you've seen Build really from the beginning of ideation when you initially had some conversations with our team about it. And since I met with you both in person last year, this has been an exciting year for Build. If anyone that is an attendee for this session attended our keynote session, we've seen a lot of growth and development, both from a feature perspective and a use perspective this year. So what are some of the exciting things, or what's one of the most exciting things you've seen happen this year, specifically that's helped enable you to do some pretty powerful things?
Yeah, so this has been really interesting for us. And we can call it chaotic deployment, but it has been about having people in the field, some of those distributed IT specialists, as well as some line of business folks, latch onto the tool and be able to develop it on their own with, frankly, very little help from us on a hand-holding basis. I mean, I actually, demo this for folks around the system on a regular basis. We've created a couple of apps, but a ton of these apps that have been deployed for UH have been developed by those distributed IT folks, the line of business folks that are at the campus or in the department level. So that's been super exciting for us. I am a little bit nervous at the level of take up, because now we have to, as both Janet and Brian have talked about, we have to make sure we wrangle this so it doesn't get out of control. We have to be able to deploy some of the API solutions that allow access to our other enterprise systems, which we have been doing as well. Super cool stuff. So I think that's been the very gratifying thing that's coming out of this effort, that we've taken a bottom-up approach on this. But we do have to figure out how to wrangle it over time to make sure that it continues to deliver high benefit to the institution. We're pretty happy where it is right now. As you said, we were in from the beginning, a little bit chaotic, to say the least. But I think especially over the past year, we've seen a ton of great things come out of Build, from both a feature as well as a roadmap point of view. So we're pretty happy and excited about what the future is going to bring.
So from our side, and similar, I'd echo some of the stuff that Garrett said. The ability to get the distributed IT folks and get even non-IT folks in and actively being able to use the tool very effectively. That's something that Sean has been very diligent and has been focusing on lately. So that expansion, is happening now. I think we're trying to control it as much as we can without overly controlling it, right? We want to kind of free everybody to do their thing, but we don't want the environment to turn into a big dumping ground of junk, or just replicate the problem that we were trying to solve, or one of the problems, which is we end up with 10 Kuali Build apps that all do the same thing, right? So it's kind of hence the community of practice that we're trying to put together, the data, the sharing, the ability to, if someone wants to make a request, say, I want to deploy this app, we may tell them, you know what, we already have one that's sitting here. We can now, and this is one of the new things we can do, we can actually copy that application, create another minor version of it if we need to, or we can just modify the existing one to be able to accommodate a larger audience on the campus. So those things, and as well, like for us, one of the biggest things is the increase in integration capability, because that was a big deal for us initially. And the headway that's been made during the last year and what we see coming is great. It's going to help us in many ways. So those are a couple of things that I could say.
That's great. No, those resonate really with me. What I think is really interesting in how you all have spoken about Build. I know we're over time, so we're going to wrap up pretty soon here. But what I think is really interesting, particularly about your approach versus Janet, some of the things you said is control versus lack of control. Because you could argue either way, one might be better than the other, but ultimately it seems like both approaches are leading to a similar solution where people are interested, engaged, excited. It's just maybe that question that could be interesting to dive into more is, when do you apply that level of control if you leave it open at the start to generate interest versus having a tighter control from the top down at the start? When do you open it up more? So anyways, really interesting thoughts. Thank you all for sharing. I will wrap us up by sharing my screen and just going through our final slides. So again, if you have any questions, reach out to us at build@kuali.co. And Build contest closes tomorrow. Last chance, get your application in for a free app. Go to kuali.co/contest and tell us what you would build. And thank you for joining. Thank you all for being on our panel today. And hopefully we'll see some of you in 10 minutes for Making Friends in the Build community session. Thanks, everyone.